Just a quick review of our Zoom protocols. I think we're all used to this sort of thing by now. We are going to try to keep this morning's meeting to an hour, hopefully with a little time for questions at the end, as we mentioned. When we get to that point, you're welcome to use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen to ask a question. You can raise your hand physically, and we'll try to spot you. You're also welcome to use the chat function at that point too. And you're going to generally be muted for most of the meeting so that we don't deal with so much audio feedback and things like that. That'll help us run through things smoothly. So now I'm going to turn it back over to our bishop for some opening remarks.
Well, again, friends, good morning. And I want to begin by expressing my gratitude to all in the Southern Deanery who are working so hard to prepare for this convention, to Dean Tripp and all of those who are working, and particularly also to our hosts at All Saints Hilton Head, as we prepare for the liturgy that will be there as well. It's hard to believe that I am beginning the 4th year of my episcopate in this beloved diocese. The years since I began have been, to put it briefly, very full and deeply holy. And the future promises to be just as rich. And in many ways, we're moving into a new season together. The schism's legal resolution, as you know, has been accomplished, and we've reopened or are in the process of reopening many of the congregations that were most affected. In a grassroots effort involving input from almost 200 members of our diocese and several gifted teams of mainly lay leaders, has produced a strategic vision and plan for what comes next. And we're really beginning to live into this in compelling ways. And so I feel like we've laid a solid groundwork for a sustainable and a healthy outward-looking and forward-looking season in our diocese. And it's also true that we are not without challenges. In my travels across the diocese and in Sunday visitations to congregations, I see firsthand the resilience of the people of South Carolina. And I also acknowledge that that resilience has been hard-won, and that none of us has infinite capacity to go above and beyond the call of duty. And as we enter a new season, I think it's going to be it's tempting to kind of celebrate the achievements, and we should do that. But it's tempting to do that without acknowledging the challenges. So I want to take a minute on that as we gather at this 234th convention. We're in turbulent times, folks, in our region and in our nation. And we have to think about that both in terms of the natural challenges and the political and social climate. Although we ourselves have been largely spared, this hurricane season, our neighbors, as we know, in Florida, in Georgia, and in North Carolina have faced really frightening impacts from recent storms. Also, culturally, politically, once again, we find ourselves in a hotly contested election season in our country, and differences of opinion about the right government in our nation, they're to be expected, but what's not to be expected and what really challenges us is this disheartening level of division and animosity that infects our current political climate. As followers of Jesus and the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement, and as citizens of this country, we have a duty to God and to our neighbor to participate in our democracy for the sake of the common good. And that duty is compromised for all of us, whether we belong to a political party or not, when our politics become so polarized and divided. And so I'm mindful that when we gather about a month from now, we will likely remain in stormy seas. It'll be just very soon after the national election. In conversation with some of you and with our convention speakers, I've recognized that we do have a call in this season to go deep, to find places of stability and of courage in our relationship with God, and to take our hard-won wisdom with lessons that we continue to keep growing, lessons that will sustain us in difficult times, and to bring those forward. And I'm confident that in the midst of the storms, um, Jesus is with us, folks, and Jesus is walking over the water to meet us. Jesus is accompanying us in all of the most difficult places that we're called to go. We're not really called to be Christians primarily for the easy times. We know that. So, as I recall the words from the 107th Psalm, which we take as our theme, they really speak, I think, to this moment. They that go down to the sea in ships and occupy their business in great waters, these beheld the wonders of the Lord, his wonders in the deep. Discipleship has never been easy and it's never been risk free. It has always been a bit like putting out in the great waters, in storms as well as in calm seas. But in every instance, we can trust that the Lord is still working wonders among us. So, this convention marks an invitation for each of us to deepen our faith and to deepen our engagement with one another and with the world. Now I look forward to discerning with you and with some very special guests at this convention, and I'll say more about them in a moment, what it means for our future, both near and long term, for us to go to the deep and seek wonders there. We're going to be joined in that discernment by two key thinkers. First, our convention preacher, the Right Reverend Sean Rowe. He was elected and confirmed the 28th presiding bishop and primate of the Episcopal Church on June 26 for a 9-year term that begins November 1st. Bishop Rowe, 49 years old, was ordained bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Northwestern Pennsylvania in 2007 and became bishop provisional of the Episcopal Diocese of Bethlehem. Born in Sharon, Pennsylvania, Bishop Rowe earned a PhD in organizational learning and leadership and is known for his research and work on organizational learning and adaptive performance in the church. He's married to Carly Rowe, a Christian educator, and they have a daughter, Lauren. Many of you know it has been my honor and joy to work alongside Bishop Rowe in more than one context. I've served with him in various roles in the Episcopal Church Building Fund, and then from 2019 through 2021, I served as one of the canons on his staff working in the area of strategic change. And I got to see up close his tremendous gifts in adaptive leadership. So I could not be more thrilled that he is making one of his earliest stops after his investiture as our presiding bishop to South Carolina. And he will be preaching at our opening Eucharist. He'll also be part of a kind of a conversation, three-way conversation that I'll mention in a moment with our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker will be the Reverend Canon Impa Tutu Van Firth. She is an Episcopal priest, an artist, an author, and an accomplished public speaker and retreat facilitator. So she's had many roles in nonprofit leadership, and she was the founding executive director of the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation. She continues to work for environmental justice, human rights, and equal access to opportunity for all people without regard to race, class, or gender. With her wife, Marceline, she has established and is executive director of the Tutu Teach Foundation to enhance access and opportunity for women and girls. Canon Tutu Van Firth and her wife live in the Netherlands. They have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. I first became acquainted with her right after our last convention when I had the honor of going to the American Cathedral in Paris for the institution of my dear friend who now serves as dean there. And Canon Tutu Van Firth was being installed as a canon for justice across the churches in Europe. And I was able to, through that connection, set up a time to talk with her about the work we're doing here in racial justice and repairing the breach as we build a new season, seeking to anchor in reconciliation and justice. And that conversation was really inspiring to me and led to my invitation and to my great joy, her acceptance to come and share some of her learnings with us here. So she will be presenting on our first full day on Friday morning as the keynote speaker, and then there'll be a panel following her keynote address with our new presiding bishop and canon Impaw that I will be facilitating, much as some of you will recall we did last year with our guest preacher and guest speaker. So let me give you a couple of other business highlights. We'll be hearing a strategic vision update. So members of my staff, along with the Diocesan Council and other stakeholders, have been monitoring how our performance toward the grassroots vision that we adopted at last year's convention, centered on our mission and vision statements, is going. So just by way of reminder, our mission is through the liberating gospel of Jesus, we are seeking justice, spreading Christ's love, and walking humbly with our God. And our vision is the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina, beloved community for all. And I just want to say that that vision has a tremendous gravitas when I think about the work that's happening among us in redeveloping this diocese in all sorts of ways, and the work that we are doing in racial justice and repairing the breach. Becoming beloved community for all, that's not just words, folks. That's something we are committed to living into. While you'll hear more in detail at convention about the timelines and benchmarks that are guiding us toward that vision, let me just say now that we've been ambitious in several key efforts, including church planting and replanting, clergy recruitment and support. And I mentioned also our work in justice. In some areas, we've acknowledged that as a living document, the plan has needed fine-tuning and adjustment. We are well positioned for 2025 to start accomplishing some important tasks in those areas. And in addition, we'll be hearing reports from our institutions, commissions, and leadership bodies, officers, international partners, and other special guests. And then aside from all of that, we still have the ordinary and yet really essential business that keeps us moving forward from year to year. So we have new leaders to elect and so many things to mark and celebrate. I really can't wait to be with you for what I think of as our yearly family reunion. I want to thank you so, so much for your ministry as delegates to this year's convention, for all of your ministries in the various places where you serve and continue to live the gospel of Jesus. So I will see you in November. And now for some details, I'd like to turn it over to Diane Wilson, our Secretary of Convention.
Thank you, Bishop. Good morning. I hope each of you has been following the announcements about convention this year. Let me say a few words about our format and schedule. We will be meeting Thursday afternoon through Saturday morning. Things kick off with a quick business session Thursday at 3 p.m. at the hotel, followed by our opening Eucharist and a light reception at All Saints. For those of you coming from out of town, you're encouraged to make some fun dinner plans for Thursday evening. We'll be publicizing a list of restaurant recommendations with the help of our hosts and friends from the Southern Deanery. Friday will be a full day. Morning prayer followed by business and a plenary session with our keynote address from Canon Impaw Tutu von Firth, a talkback panel with Bishop Ruth, Canon Impaw, and the presiding bishop, lunch, and several workshop opportunities. More on those later. We will continue with our business that afternoon. After that, we'll close our day with a beachside barbecue celebration. Saturday morning, we will conduct the remaining business of the convention. You'll be back on the road by noon, and we hope you get a little rest before Sunday. As always, this convention is much more than a business session, and so we encourage you to encourage others to attend as visitors. Visitors can continue to register until November 8th, so feel free to let others know about what's going on. Now I'd like to turn it over to Canon Curry for some other additional comments on format and other things delegates need to know.
Thank you, Diane. Let me just say a few things about those special programmatic offerings that we're continuing in our somewhat expanded convention format. First, on the topic of workshops, we have 3 options this year that you'll be able to sign up for in the coming days. So you'll receive an email with more instructions about these. First up, we have from our friends at St. Christopher Camp and Conference Center, a workshop on eco-justice and creation care that will feature the work of an Episcopal Church Eco Fellow who is there on staff. That's Riley Talmadge, so a very exciting opportunity. We also have Braver Angels. Braver Angels is a group that many of you will be aware of from their ongoing work with our diocese in the area of conversations that counteract political depolarization. So I think that those will continue to be timely issues for us when we gather in November. And then finally, we have the South Carolina Fair Lending Alliance giving a workshop with State Senator Tom Davis, who comes from the Beaufort area. The Fair Lending Alliance works to combat predatory lending in our state and in other areas of civic engagement. So those are our 3 workshop offerings. In addition, we'll have a couple of working lunch sessions. One is big, it's a general audience, and one is a little more focused. So the big one that anyone and everyone is invited to is from St. Christopher as well. It's called Get to Know Your Camp and Conference Center. So if you have general questions or want to hear generally about the programs that go on there, this is your chance to learn from them, to hear from them about what they offer. The other lunch session is from the Commission on Ministry. The Commission on Ministry has held meet and greet gatherings at our conventions for a while, and they've usually been at the tail end of convention. But we found starting last year that it can be maybe a more successful time to get together in the middle of convention so that people who are interested in the ordained ministry and the process that leads to ordination can attend this session from the Commission on Ministry. So we hope that these offerings will represent a variety of options for you to make this convention fun, informative, and we look forward to seeing you there. So we've switched our agenda around just a little bit to move our finance and budget report up. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, Barry Ronan.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll start with the budget process and then I'll cover finances. In the budget creation process for 2025, feedback was requested and received from the diocese and requests for the 2025 budget. And we greatly appreciate the input that we received. Andrea McKellar, Canon for Strategy and Vitality, the bishop, and myself created the initial draft based on the 2024 actuals, as well as new and continuing needs for our congregations. The trustees reviewed and approved the amount needed to transfer in support of this budget at their last meeting, and also at the 2 most recent meetings, the Finance Committee and the Diocesan Council reviewed, and they also approved the budget. On the income side, we are on pace to reach our goal for the year for church giving. In 2023, our church giving was up almost 8%. Our budget, our 2025 budget increases our goal for giving to 9%, and our goal for all churches at 10% in the coming years. We are also, in fact, going to be pursuing a development campaign in 2025, and monies are in the budget to engage a development consultant again in 2025. From an expense side, the budget has been linked with the strategic vision for the diocese. Some of the expenses to highlight include a 3% cost of living increase for the staff, increased support for justice ministries, leadership development, and other areas outlined in the strategic vision initiatives. Continued support for parish and missions are in the budget, as well as in the second budget for returning churches, churches not returned, and the historically disenfranchised churches. Funding that is fully funded for 2025 as well. Just briefly on financials, just to let you know, after our bookkeeper resigned unexpectedly in 2023, the diocese then recruited a comptroller in early 24, and Stephanie Benz, who possesses excellent credentials, was selected for the position. Stephanie recently completed the closing of the year-end financials for 2023, which were delayed again because of that resignation of the bookkeeper. So both the year-end financials as well as our year-to-date financials for 2024 were presented to the Finance Committee, and both are in appropriate order. The diocese is financially sound at this point. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Next up, we have a report from the chair of our nominating committee, and that's the Reverend Rob Spanauer. Rob.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm Rob Spanauer. I'm the priest in charge at Church of the Epiphany in Somerville. And I'd like to thank the nominations committee for their hard work in filling our slate with wonderful nominations for leadership in our diocese. The names on our committee are the Very Reverend Michael Schaefer, Ms. Gail DaCosta, myself as chair, Mike Singletary, the Reverend Bill Watson, Mr. Woody Rutter, the Reverend Eunice Dunlap, and Ms. Deb Harris. And I would invite you to read the details on the nominating report. They're informative, and they will guide you as you prayerfully decide those persons that will lead us in the coming days as led by the Holy Spirit. The slate of nominations for diocesan council for a 3-year term, clergy nominees, 2 clergy seats, are the Reverend Kevin Sparrow and the Very Reverend Roy Tripp. Lay nominees, 2 lay seats, are Donnelly Dodson, Sherlinda Gallant, Sally Mays, Catherine Ragsdale, and Matthew Robertson. For the standing committee for 3-year terms, the clergy nominees to 2 clergy seats are the Reverend Denise Trogdon, the Reverend Ricardo Bailey. Lay nominees, 2 lay seats, are Carla Cantrell, Peter Goyard, Jane Hart Lewis, Betsy Smith-Deal, and Diane Wilson. For the trustees of the diocese, a 6-year term, clergy nominees are myself, the Reverend Rob Spanauer. Lay nominees are 1 lay seat, Peggy Kovacs, Laura Marshall, Earl Phillips, Steve Scarden, and Keith Williamson. Trustee for the University of South for a 3-year term, clergy nominee is the Very Reverend Joseph Smith. There will be a Meet the Nominees session on Zoom Thursday, November 14th at 6 p.m. The relevant details will be communicated via email and on the convention webpage. And you will have a chance to hear from nominees about who they are and their sense of call towards their positions. We want to thank each candidate for their willingness to serve and look forward to seeing everyone in November. Next up, we have a report from a resolutions committee given by Elizabeth Walker.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Walker. I am from St. Catherine's in Florence, and I'm a delegate and member of the Resolutions Committee. Others serving with me on the committee are the Reverend Brooks Boylan from Christ Church in Mount Pleasant, Ms. Ellen Harden, who is our chair, and coming from St. Mark's in Charleston, the Reverend Ross Trattora from Grace Church Cathedral, and then myself. The Resolutions Committee received 1 pre-submitted resolution from a member of the diocese, and that's currently on your screen. It permits confirmed youth liaison officers of 16 or older to serve on vestries and mission councils of congregations, and also encourages parishes and missions to lower the age of eligibility for voting in annual meetings to 16 years. A similar resolution was taken up for debate last year, but was not moved because it was found not to be in accord with state law. which stipulates that voting members of nonprofit boards be of majority age. So this year's resolution agrees now with the language of Episcopal Church canon as well as South Carolina state law. And so the Resolutions Committee looks forward to moving the resolution at convention along with several other courtesy resolutions, which are in draft form now. We have also adopted 2 resolutions from the General Convention of the Episcopal Church held this past summer. One, promoting acknowledgements of the lands of indigenous peoples and lands worked by enslaved peoples of African descent in our diocese. And the other, remembering and celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Philadelphia 11, the first female priest ordained in the Episcopal Church. Next up, we have our Vice Chancellor, Melinda Kelly, who is also chairing the Constitution and Canons Committee.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning. I would like to mention that our committee is made up of Reverend Canon Phil Linder, who is Bishop's Canon to the Ordinary, the Very Reverend Dr. Michael Schaefer, Reverend Canon Rob Donahue, and our Chancellor, Skip Utzi, and I are the lay members. This year, our report has 3 items, one of which is a second reading vote from last year's constitutional proposed changes. And all of those went through first reading in 2023. I won't go through them all, but I will say that they are on the website. And if you were to go in the About Us on the Diocesan website and go down to governance, we've kept them as red notations so that you'll be able to see which ones, and they were relatively minor this year for those. The next item that we have, actually 2 and 3 kind of go together. We are proposing that first Article 9 in our Constitution, which refers to the Standing Committee, will, if approved, would allow clergy to be members. And the next one too, I'll wait and we'll go into detail about the next one, but the next one is the same thing for Diocesan Council. Just so you'll know, these are also constitutional changes, the ones for Standing Committee, and so they'll take 2 votes. This year will be first reading, and next, if they are approved this year, they would need to come back for a second vote. And as you can see, and I won't read this, but the phrases highlighted in red would be canonically resident clergy, whereas it had been priests, and that appears in a few different times, section 1 and section 3. And Title I, Canon 15 also, and this one is for Diocesan Council, is proposed to also allow clergy as members. And that would take a second vote as well because, that one is a canon, so it does not take 2 votes. And you can see in red that it pretty much parrots what the other one said for Standing Committee, canonically resident clergy, and the same thing in the second paragraph. So those are our changes that we proposed. And if there are any questions, I'll be here for the remaining part of the meeting and be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Melinda. Let's see. As we draw to our close, I just want to mention a few more important dates and other sources of information. Saturday, October 26th, coming right up, is the last day to register for the hotel rooms at group rates. So we did have our initial block of 100 rooms got all booked up, but we were able to secure some more from the hotel. So if you haven't made your reservation, you still have an opportunity to do that at the Episcopal Church Convention group rate. Our deadline for visitor registration is Friday, November 8th. As always, visitors are encouraged to attend. Thursday, November 14th is that Meet the Nominees meeting on Zoom that you heard about. Let me say, looking at the bottom of your screen, that these dates and the links to the reports and all the other important information is available or will become available at the convention webpage. To get there, just go to our diocesan website, which is episcopalchurchsc.org, and there's a tab for convention. It drops down. You can see 234th Diocesan Convention. So if you have not visited that webpage, go ahead and do so. It's got critical information, including the schedule. We'll continue to be uploading things there. So that's your one-stop shop for all things convention. If you have questions, we encourage you to write us at this email, convention@episcopalchurchsc.org. There are several staff members who monitor that inbox, and so we can respond to any questions you might have. Let me also say that we are still asking members of the diocese to submit names for our necrology report. We ask for remembrances of those clergy or clergy spouses with ties to the diocese, as well as lay members who have served the diocese in some capacity, those who have died in the past year. So generally, when it comes to those lay leaders, we're thinking of people who might have served on diocesan council, standing committee, or other commissions or leadership positions. Basically, those who have served in a way that was beyond their own congregation and really was service to the whole diocese. So we ask that you send their names and any relevant biographical information to that email address, convention@episcopalchurchsc.org. Okay, that concludes our planned remarks. So that we can accommodate time for questions at the end here. Bishop, would you mind closing us with prayer, and then we'll open the floor up for anyone with questions.
Be happy to. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Gracious God, we praise you for your body, that wonderful and sacred mystery. May we participate in that mystery with full hearts. May we be open and curious about the wonders you hold for us, and receiving them, be emboldened to live your gospel, not only with our lips, but in our lives. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Bishop. You are welcome to move on with your day if you have other things to do, but if you do have questions, you're welcome to stay on. Again, use the raise hand function, use the chat, or try to get our attention otherwise. Thank you all for being here, and a big thank you to our presenters. Yes, Father Schaefer, if you'll unmute yourself.
Yeah, just as a supplement to Melinda's fine report on the canons and constitution recommendations, I do want to add, because I think it's important, an additional recommendation being made as to the standing committee amendment to the Constitution is that lay members be eligible to serve as president. In the past, that our Constitution has required that clergy members be priests, and that standing committee elect a priest as president of that committee. These recommendations would be to amend the Constitution so that deacons could serve as well as priests, and that any member of the body, whether lay or clergy, could serve as president. So it's important, so I wanted to mention it.
Thank you, Michael. Steve Scarden. If you'll unmute yourself, please.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Melinda, I didn't totally follow the conversation on the proposed amendment to the Constitution about the 6 priests or 6 clergy and 6 lay people. Does the current Constitution provide for provide for priests to be members of the? So this is just simply saying that those 6 slots are also open to all clergy, not just priests.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Steve. There was a question in the chat from MJ regarding voting procedures, whether you will be downloading an app and things like that. Canna McKellar, are you still on the call?
Yes.
Okay, I
I'm
wonder if
happy
you.
to take that one. Yep.
Thank you.
So we're going to be using Simply Voting again. So those of you who've come before will be familiar with that. It is a web page that we link to, so it can work from your phone or a computer. It can also work from a friend's phone or computer because you'll have an individual login. So if you're not bringing your own tablet, we can phone a friend and use neighbors as well. Your voting credentials will be sent to you the day before. That is because we end up having a lot of changes usually between now and voting. So we want to make sure only the voters are getting voting credentials. So you'll be sent that ahead of time, and we will do a test vote at the beginning of convention to make sure everyone's able to access that.
Okay, thank you, Canna McKellar. I received another question in the chat about whether we are live streaming parts of convention. We do plan to live stream highlights, so it won't be the entirety of the business sessions, but some of those key moments like the keynote address, worship at All Saints, we do plan to make available. If not as live stream, we're still evaluating the technical capacities in the room. It may be after the fact, so maybe not live, but we will make sure to have some of those things on video so that they can be shared with you, especially those celebratory moments like the keynote address and the panel. Okay, I'm scanning the room for other questions, so please do raise your hand or press that button down below or use the chat. Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you all so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it and look forward to seeing you all in November. Blessings.
Thank you.